Morning sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive level at Apex Innovations, the 50th floor of a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan. Golden rays danced across the polished marble floor, creating a majestic scene full of promise. For Camille Harris, a 27-year-old Black American woman, this was supposed to be the biggest day of her career. Her first day as a marketing coordinator at Apex Innovations, the world's leading technology conglomerate. She had spent months perfecting her resume, selecting the ideal outfit, a navy blue pencil skirt that flattered her shape, a pristine white silk blouse, and high heels that made her feel like she could conquer the world. But fate, as always, had its plans. Camille stepped out of the elevator clutching a leather portfolio under her arm, her natural curls neatly pulled back into an elegant low bun. A confident smile graced her lips as she nodded at the security guard, Mr. Jackson, who handed her a temporary access badge with a friendly wink. "Welcome to Apex, Ms. Harris. Big day for you, huh?" he said with a deep voice. Camille nodded, her heart pounding faster as the elevator carried her to the executive level without stopping. She had dreamed of this moment ever since she was a student at Howard University, where she graduated valedictorian in marketing, defying stereotypes about race and gender to earn this chance. Everything was going smoothly until she stopped at the juice bar in the main lobby. She planned to order a glass of orange juice to calm her nerves, but a frantic intern carrying a stack of documents accidentally bumped into her. The orange juice flew into the air, splashing across the front of her white silk blouse, the one she'd spent an entire month's salary to buy. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," the intern stammered, face flushed red, but Camille could only hear the thunderous pounding of her heart. She gave a strained smile, quickly pulling tissues from her handbag, a gift from her mother Denise, who always reminded her to be prepared for anything, and rushed down the hallway searching for a private place to change. She spotted a door labeled Meeting Room B and sighed in relief when she found it unlocked. Inside was a luxurious space, a long walnut table, premium leather chairs, and a glass wall that offered a breathtaking view of the Manhattan skyline. A large mirror hung on the wall, likely used by executives rehearsing presentations. Perfect, Camille thought. She set down her briefcase, pulled out a backup blouse, a simpler pale blue one, still professional, and unbuttoned the juice-stained silk shirt. The meeting room door swung open as she stood in her thin lace bra. Time froze. Through the reflection in the mirror, Camille saw a man step inside, tall, powerful, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit. He had dark brown hair, piercing gray-blue eyes like a stormy sky, and pale skin glowed in the natural light. Their eyes met in the mirror, and for a moment neither moved. Camille realized with horror that she was half undressed in front of a stranger. "Get out!" she yelled hastily, grabbing her spare blouse to shield her chest, her voice echoing in the silent room. The man didn't budge. One hand still on the door handle, he looked at her with an unreadable expression, not exactly angry, but a strange mix of surprise and amusement. A smirk formed on his face, sharpening his chiseled features and making him look dangerous and magnetic. "I'm sorry," he said, voice deep and smooth like velvet laced with a northeastern accent. "I didn't realize this room was occupied." Camille felt her face flush as embarrassment turned quickly to fury. "Didn't you see the door was closed? Get out. Now." Without thinking, she grabbed the nearest object, a hardcover notebook on the table, and hurled it at him with startling accuracy. He leaned aside, dodging it effortlessly as it slammed against the doorframe with a loud thud. Instead of being angry, he laughed, a rich, warm sound that made her flustered and even more irritated. "Nice aim," he said, stepping back but still not leaving. "Though I must say this is the first time my meeting room has been used in such creative fashion." His smirk widened, lighting up his face, though his eyes remained locked on her as if committing every detail to memory. His meeting room. Camille felt the blood drain from her face. She looked around and noticed details she'd missed: the original painting on the wall, the leather chair noticeably more expensive than others, and the panoramic view of Central Park. This wasn't just any meeting room. This was a senior executive's domain. I'm sorry, she stammered, her earlier confidence evaporating. I thought this room was vacant. My shirt. The orange juice. She pointed to the crumpled silk blouse on the chair, feeling like a kid caught red-handed. He raised a hand, signaling her to stop explaining. Orange juice incidents are serious business, he said, his tone gentle, yet tinged with teasing. Though next time I'd suggest the changing room at the end of the hallway. Less risk of running into uninvited guests. He raised an eyebrow, and Camille wasn't sure if she wanted to slap him or disappear entirely. I need to go, she said quickly, scrambling to gather her things, fingers trembling as she buttoned the new blouse. I'm already late for orientation. She tried to keep her voice steady, though her heart pounded like it was trying to escape her chest. Who was this man? A director? A stakeholder? Someone important enough to have a private meeting room on a floor reserved for top leadership? Orientation starts in 20 minutes, he said calmly, with the confidence of someone who knew her schedule. You've got time to change. I'll step out and make sure no one disturbs you. Before she could respond, he turned and gently shut the door behind him. Camille stood frozen, staring at the closed door, the air conditioning sending a chill down her spine. She hurried to finish changing, fixed her hair and makeup in the mirror, and tried to steady her breath. When she opened the door, part of her hoped he'd be gone. But no, he was still there, leaning casually against the wall, typing something on his phone. Seeing her, he slipped the phone into his pocket, the smile returning, gentle but meaningful. Better, he asked, his eyes sweeping over her new blouse. Yes, thank you, she replied, clutching the ruined silk shirt like a shield. And, sorry about the notebook. I didn't mean. She stopped herself, unwilling to dwell further in her embarrassment. I'm not complaining, he said, stepping closer, his voice lowered. This has been the most interesting morning I've had in years. However, if you plan to keep throwing things, the CFO's office has entire stacks of paperwork one floor down. Much more effective than a notebook. He winked, and Camille felt the corners of her mouth twitch upward despite everything. I'll keep that in mind, she said, surprised at herself for smiling. Though I hope I won't need to get that creative again while I'm here. A shame, he whispered, and the tone in his voice made her cheeks burn. He pointed down the hallway. Orientation room's on the left. Try not to scare the other executives before you get there. With that, he turned away, his leather shoes making no sound on the thick carpet. Camille watched his retreating figure, a strange feeling blooming in her chest. That something important had just happened. A moment that would change her life in ways she couldn't comprehend. She glanced down at her access badge, then looked again at the man disappearing from view. Her mother, Denise, always said first impressions were everything. But sometimes, the unexpected moments, the orange juice, the notebook, and those storm-gray eyes shaped destiny. Camille took a deep breath, smoothed her skirt, and walked toward the orientation room. She didn't know yet that the man she had just thrown a notebook at was Ethan Caldwell, CEO of Apex Innovations, and that he had already begun making plans to ensure their paths would cross again. Not just once, but many times in the future. The sunlight continued streaming through the windows, promising new beginnings, surprises, and perhaps destiny. 3 days had passed since that fateful moment in the meeting room. But Camille Harris still couldn't erase the image of those storm-gray eyes from her mind. She had thrown a notebook at the mysterious man, and instead of getting angry, he'd responded with a teasing smile that sent her heart racing. Now sitting at her temporary desk in the marketing department of Apex Innovations. Camille tried to focus on the market analysis on her screen. but the memory of his deep voice and stormy gaze lingered, pulling her thoughts away. The 50th floor of Apex was a world of precision and ambition. Transparent glass walls opened to a glittering view of Manhattan, while the tapping of keyboards and the rise and fall of colleagues' voices created a modern symphony. Camille, with her curls tied up high and a deep blue suit that complemented her smooth brown skin, had quickly adapted. She had spent the entire weekend researching data, preparing for orientation, and completing a report on digital marketing trends. As a Black woman in the tech industry, she knew she had to work twice as hard to prove her worth, and she was used to that ever since her days at Howard University. On Wednesday morning, an email from Human Resources startled her. Subject line: "Congratulations on your promotion, Director of Marketing." Camille reread it several times, her coffee cup frozen midair. Director of Marketing. She had only just been hired as a marketing coordinator, the lowest position in the department. This title was 5 levels higher, a leap that even veterans took decades to achieve. "This must be a mistake," she murmured, rechecking the email. But no, it had Apex's official logo, the signature of the head of HR, and more importantly, the line "CC Ethan Caldwell, CEO." His name made her heart skip a beat. Ethan Caldwell, the man from the meeting room. The one she now knew was the supreme leader of Apex. The phone on her desk rang, cutting through her thoughts. Ms. Harris Regina, the executive floor secretary, said crisply, "Mr. Caldwell would like to see you immediately." Camille took a deep breath, smoothed her skirt, and entered the elevator. Reflected in the polished steel doors was the image of a confident woman, but inside she was wrestling with a storm of doubt. Was this a joke? Or worse, a punishment for the notebook incident? Ethan Caldwell's office was a flawless blend of power and personality. An ebony wood desk dominated the center. Behind it, a glass wall overlooked the Manhattan skyline. However, the more minor details caught Camille's attention: a volume of Langston Hughes poetry on the shelf, a photo of Ethan with a rescue dog, and a coffee mug with a chipped rim. When she entered, Ethan stood up, his suit jacket off, revealing a white shirt fitted perfectly across his broad shoulders. He smiled, not the teasing grin from before, but one that was warm, familiar, and made her involuntarily relax. "Ms. Harris, thank you for coming," he said, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. "No weapons today, I hope." He raised an eyebrow, and Camille couldn't suppress a smile. "No notebooks, Mr. Caldwell," she replied with a hint of humor. "But I still reserve the right to self-defense if needed." Ethan laughed, the sound filling the room. "Good. I like someone who can protect herself." He sat down, his expression growing more serious. "About the promotion email. Do you have any questions?" "Questions?" Camille nearly laughed. "Mr. Caldwell, I've only been here 3 days. I was hired as a coordinator. This has to be a mistake." "I don't make mistakes, Ms. Harris," Ethan said, locking his gray-blue eyes onto hers. "I reviewed your digital marketing report, 15 pages of detailed analysis, 3 proposals for revamping our social media strategy, and a sharp critique of our recent ad campaign. You worked until midnight, didn't you?" Camille felt heat rise to her cheeks. She hadn't expected anyone, especially the CEO, to notice her late hours. I just wanted to make sure the work was done well," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You didn't just complete it, you excelled," Ethan said. "Your resume was impressive: valedictorian at Howard, a creative thesis on digital transformation, glowing letters of recommendation. But what you've done in the last 3 days caught my attention. Apex needs talent like yours in leadership roles." Camille shook her head, still in disbelief. "This is too big a leap. What will people say?" "They'll think." She stopped, not wanting to voice her fear that her colleagues would believe she was favored for personal reasons, that a black woman like her couldn't earn such a role on merit alone. People always talk, Ethan said, waving away her concern. Apex didn't grow by following conventional rules. We identify talent. We cultivate it. You have extraordinary potential, Camille. The only question is, are you brave enough to take this opportunity? His words were a challenge, one that awakened the fire inside her. The fire that had carried her through sleepless nights at school, through countless rejections because of her skin color, and through skeptical glances in corporate boardrooms. When do I start? She asked, her voice firm. Ethan smiled, eyes lighting up. You've already started. Your new office is being set up on this floor. You'll be working directly with me on global marketing strategy. Working directly with him. The phrase sent a shiver through her, part excitement, part apprehension. She stood shaking his hand, feeling the warmth of his touch radiate through her. Thank you, Mr. Caldwell, she said, keeping her voice professional. I won't let you down. Call me Ethan, he said, holding her hand a moment longer. And I believe you'll do far more than that. The following weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, reports, and new responsibilities. Camille dove into her role as director of marketing with fierce determination. She led campaigns, pitched bold ideas, and quickly earned the respect of her team. But what unsettled her the most were the moments with Ethan. He often stopped by her office, sleeves rolled up, coffee in hand, asking for her thoughts on a new initiative. What's your take on targeting Gen Z? He asked one day, perched casually on the edge of her desk, close enough that she could smell the woodsy notes of his cologne. One evening after a long day, Ethan invited her to a small cafe in Greenwich Village to discuss the Asia project. Coda's Brew was a hidden gem in Manhattan, with exposed brick walls and soft golden lighting. They sat in a quiet corner, steam rising from their coffee cups. The conversation shifted from strategy to personal stories. Camille spoke of her journey growing up in Harlem, where her mother, Denise, a school teacher, taught her that a black woman has to be twice as good to get half the recognition. Ethan listened, eyes never leaving her, and opened up about the pressure from his family, a wealthy Connecticut dynasty, who expected him to uphold the Apex empire without a single failure. Do you ever feel like you don't belong here? He asked, voice low. I grew up in rooms filled with power, but sometimes I want to be myself. Camille smiled, surprised by his vulnerability. Every day, she said. But I learned to turn that difference into strength. I'll carve out my space if I don't belong here. Ethan looked at her, his eyes lighting up like he'd found something rare and precious. As they left the cafe, his hand brushed hers while handing her coat. Both paused, the air between them charged. Thank you for tonight, Camille, he said, voice softer than usual. I hope we'll have more evenings like this. She nodded, heart pounding. As she walked home under the streetlights, Camille knew she was standing at the crossroads of something far greater, her career and heart. Ethan Caldwell wasn't just her CEO. He made her feel seen, valued, and more dangerously desired. But in the world of Apex, where watchful eyes and whispered rumors lurked everywhere, would she dare let that spark ignite? Rain began to fall just as Camille Harris stepped out of the meeting room on the 50th floor of Apex Innovations. Droplets tapping rhythmically against the glass windows, as if trying to soothe the tension from a grueling 3-hour meeting. She had just convinced the executive board to approve a bold new digital marketing strategy targeting the Southeast Asian market. The directors, initially skeptical, had finally nodded in agreement, thanks to her sharp arguments and solid data. But when Ethan Caldwell, CEO of Apex, let his gaze linger on her a moment longer than necessary, Camille felt a jolt of electricity shoots down her spine. He smiled, a subtle yet warm smile, and her heart skipped a beat, just as it had the week before at Coda's Brew. Now standing in the empty hallway, Camille smoothed the hem of her wine-red pencil skirt, her natural curls pulled high to reveal the graceful line of her neck. As a black woman in tech, she had always known how to make her presence stand out through talent and poise. But Ethan, with storm-gray eyes and the commanding presence of a white man born into privilege, unsettled her in a way she had never experienced. He wasn't just the CEO. He made her feel seen, not as a top performer, but as Camille Harris, with her dreams and fears. Ms. Harris. Ethan's voice came from behind, pulling her out of her thoughts. She turned to see him standing at the meeting room door, his white shirt sleeves rolled up revealing firm forearms. "You did great today. Johnson isn't easy to convince, but you shut him down completely." "Impressive." "Thank you, Ethan," she said, trying to keep her voice professional, though the way he said her name, gentle, intimate, made her cheeks warm. "I was just doing my job." "And doing it exceptionally well," he said, stepping closer. "Got time for coffee? I want to discuss the Southeast Asia plan in more detail." "Coda's 7 p.m. Camille hesitated. A part of her screamed that this was a risk, working so closely with the CEO, especially when his eyes didn't look at her strictly professionally, could lead to rumors. Colleagues had already started whispering about her rapid promotion, and as a black woman, she knew those whispers could easily become accusations. But another part of her, the one that longed for the connection she'd felt at the cafe the week before, nudged her to say yes. "All right," she said with a smile. "But fair warning, I won't go easy if you try to argue strategy." Ethan laughed, the sound echoing down the hallway. "Duly noted. See you tonight." Coda's brew, with its golden lights and the rich aroma of roasted coffee, was the perfect refuge from the increasingly heavy rain. Camille and Ethan sat in their usual corner, steaming mugs before them. The conversation began with business market analysis competitors, but soon drifted into more personal territory. Camille spoke of her mother, Denise, who once worked 3 shifts to put her through college, and how she taught her that a black woman has to build an entire world just to stand in it. Ethan listened intently, eyes fixed on her, and shared stories of his childhood in Connecticut, where he was forced into the perfect air mold, with no room for error. "Have you ever wanted to quit?" he asked, voice low. When everything got too hard, Camille sipped her coffee, thinking of the rejections and the skeptical glances in interviews. "Yes," she admitted. "But every time I remember my mother," she said, "Camille, you don't need anyone's permission to shine. You have to do it." And so I did. Ethan smiled, his eyes glowing. She was right. You shine, Camille. Not just in the boardroom, but everywhere. His compliment flustered her, and she quickly changed the subject. "What about you? What keeps Ethan Caldwell going when everything falls apart?" He glanced out the window where the rain had become a steady downpour. "I used to think it was duty to my family to apex. Lately, however, I have realized that I want more than that. I want to live, not just survive. And you..." He paused as if weighing his words. "You make me feel that." The air between them grew heavy, thick with unspoken thoughts. When they left the cafe, the rain had turned into a light storm. Ethan suggested a walk through Central Park just to enjoy the air. Camille, though she knew she should decline, found herself agreeing. They walked beneath the trees, rain soaking through their coats, but neither seemed to care. The rain blurred the streetlights, creating a world that belonged only to them. Under a large oak tree, Ethan stopped and turned to her. His dark brown hair was soaked, clinging to his forehead, and his storm-gray eyes gleamed in the dim light. "Camille," he said, voice husky, "I know this is complicated. I'm your boss. Rules and people are watching. But when I'm with you, none of that matters. I only see you, the woman who makes me want to be the best version of myself." Camille's heart pounded, her breath catching. She wanted to run to preserve the careful distance she'd built to protect the career she had fought so hard to build. But Ethan's gaze, earnest and intense, held her in place. "Ethan," she whispered, "if we do this, everything will change. My job, my reputation. I can't risk it all." "Then we'll be careful," he said, stepping closer, the heat from his body cutting through the cold rain. "But I can't pretend I don't feel this. Camille, I'm falling in love with you." His confession struck like lightning, illuminating every fear and longing inside her. Before she could think, the rain seemed to push them forward. Ethan took her hand, pulling her into an impromptu dance beneath the oak. They spun and laughed as rain splashed around them like two carefree children. Camille felt free, as if the rain had washed away every barrier race status rules. As the rain's rhythm slowed, Ethan stopped pulling her into his arms. Their faces were only inches apart, breaths mingling. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "Tell me this is too dangerous too soon." But Camille couldn't. She rose onto her toes, her lips brushing his. The kiss began softly like a question, but quickly grew urgent, full of longing and promise. The rain kept falling, but they didn't feel cold. They only felt each other. Suddenly, a figure appeared on a nearby path, a colleague from Apex, umbrella in hand, eyes curious. Camille pulled back, startled, her heart pounding with fear. Ethan held her hand and whispered, "Don't worry, I'll handle it." But the colleague's cold and probing gaze made her realize that this beautiful moment would come with a price. As they left the park, hand in hand, Camille knew she had just crossed a line she couldn't return from. The kiss in the rain was the beginning of a love story, and the spark for the challenges to come. Rain might wash away many things, but it couldn't erase the eyes watching from the shadows, or the whispers already beginning to echo through the halls of Apex Innovations. The charity gala of Apex Innovations at the Plaza Hotel was a dazzling portrait of light and power. Crystal chandeliers sparkled from the ceiling, illuminating guests in luxurious evening attire. Camille Harris stood near a massive floral arrangement, her deep purple evening gown hugging her figure, accentuating her smooth brown skin and graceful curves. As the newly appointed director of marketing, she knew all eyes were on her, some admiring, others scrutinizing. But tonight, she wasn't just attending as a leader. She and Ethan Caldwell, CEO of Apex, had agreed to go public with their relationship, a bold step after months of secret kisses and quiet evenings in Central Park. Camille sipped her champagne, sensing Ethan's gaze from across the room. He spoke with board members, his black suit emphasizing his tall frame and dark brown hair. His gray-blue eyes returned to her full of warmth that made her heart flutter. Yet even in this moment of happiness, Camille couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her. Rumors about her promotion as a black woman had spread through the halls of Apex. "She has someone backing her," a colleague had once whispered in the break room. She had tried to ignore it to focus on her work, but those words remained sharp as knives. "You must be the famous Camille Harris," a voice behind her said, cool and cutting like shattered crystal. Camille turned to face a tall, elegant woman in a shimmering silver gown. Her golden hair was swept up in an elaborate bun, her green eyes sharp as blades, and her smile calculated. "I'm Sophia Langley," the woman said, extending a hand with a diamond ring that flashed under the lights. "Surprised Ethan hasn't mentioned me. We were engaged, you know. Until quite recently." Camille's world tilted. Engaged. She instinctively shook Sophia's hand, feeling the icy grip of slender fingers. "Recently," she asked, her voice smaller than she intended. "Oh yes," Sophia replied, smiling, though her eyes remained razor-sharp. "We broke up just a few months before you were hired. What a coincidence. Right when you showed up with that meteoric rise and—" Special attention from Ethan. She emphasized the word special with pointed accusations. Camille felt the heat rise in her face but kept her composure. I didn't know about you, she said evenly. But I'm here because of my work, not anyone's favoritism. Sophia laughed, a crisp, hollow sound, devoid of warmth. Of course. But did you know you're not the first woman Ethan has favored? She pulled out her phone, tapped quickly, and turned the screen toward Camille. An old article popped up. The headline made Camille's stomach tighten. Apex Innovation CEO, accused of harassment. Female employee alleges coercion. The article details a former employee named Rachel Nguyen, who left the company after accusing Ethan of abusing his power. No way, Camille murmured, but her voice lacked conviction. The Ethan she knew, the one who danced with her in the rain, who listened to her dreams, couldn't be that man. Oh, sweetie. Sophia sighed, feigning sympathy. Do you think you're special? This is Ethan's pattern. He finds young, ambitious women, promotes them quickly, and makes them feel chosen. Then, when he's bored, he tosses them aside. Ask him about Rachel Nguyen. Ask him about the 2019 Singapore conference, where he promised her a promotion to deputy director. Then she suddenly resigned. Ask about the settlements that never appeared in public records. Camille set down her champagne flute before she dropped it, her hands trembling. You're lying, she said, but doubt had already begun to take root. The sudden promotion, the intimate coffees, and the way Ethan always found a reason to be near her began to take on a new disturbing shade. Am I? Sophia arched a brow. Confront him. See what he says when cornered. She leaned in, her voice a whisper. I'm only trying to help you, Camille. I don't want another talented woman destroyed by Ethan Caldwell's games. As if summoned, Ethan appeared through the crowd. His face paled at the sight of Sophia. Sophia, he said, tension in his voice. I didn't know you were in New York. Surprised, Sophia replied, leaning in to kiss his cheek, a possessive gesture. I was just getting acquainted with your newest employee. She said employee with such biting sarcasm that Camille's cheeks burned with shame. Camille looked at Ethan, her eyes pleading for him to deny everything and explain that it was all a misunderstanding, but he couldn't meet her gaze. His eyes darted away. Camille. He began reaching for her, but she stepped back. Who is she, Ethan? She asked, her voice low but sharp. And Rachel Nguyen, Singapore. Everything she said. Why didn't you tell me? It's not what you think, he said urgently. I can explain, just not here. Not like this. No, I think here is perfect, Camille said, anger rising to eclipse the hurt. This is where you work, right? Promoting women. You want making them feel special, then letting them spiral into scandal. That's not fair, he protested. But his voice weakened, as if he knew he was already losing this moment. Sophia smiled, her eyes glinting with victory. Think carefully about what we talked about, Ms. Harris, she said, leaving. Especially about the settlements. They tell a very interesting story. Camille didn't look back. She walked through the crowd with the same grace she'd always carried and accepted her coat from an attendant with steady hands. She allowed her tears to fall only once inside the taxi, as the city lights blurred behind the rain-slicked window. Every kiss, every whisper from Ethan, had it all been part of a game. She thought of her mother Denise, who had always warned her. Powerful men rarely love without an agenda. Was she right? At home, Camille opened her laptop, her hands trembling as she typed, Ethan Caldwell scandal. Articles filled the screen, confirming Sophia's words, harassment accusations, female employees leaving with secret settlements and rumors of favoritism. Apex's PR team had buried some stories, but the pattern was clear. Her story, the unexpected meeting, the rapid promotion, the romantic arc, fit it perfectly. She shut the laptop and stared out the window, where the rain still fell. Ethan had made her believe in love. Now, all she saw was betrayal. She couldn't stay at Apex, not with the knowing stares, the whispered rumors. She needed a new beginning, far from Ethan Caldwell and his secrets. But deep down, her heart still ached, because despite everything, she still loved him. And that scared her more than all the lies ever could. The first light of dawn filtered through the curtains of Camille Harris's small apartment in Harlem, but it couldn't chase away the darkness inside her. The charity gala at the Plaza Hotel, with Sophia Langley's shocking revelations, still haunted her like an unending nightmare. Sophia's words about Ethan Caldwell, CEO of Apex Innovations, and the accusations of harassment of using ambitious young women echoed in Camille's mind. But what shattered her heart even more was Ethan's silence when she confronted him, the way his eyes avoided hers, like a confession without words. Camille sat at the dining table, a cold cup of coffee in front of her, her laptop open, with countless articles about Ethan. Headlines like, Apex CEO, entangled in female employee scandal, or Rachel Nguyen resigns, amidst allegations, made her feel suffocated. She had loved Ethan, had believed he saw her as a woman, not just an employee. But now every intimate moment, the kiss in the rain, the coffees at Coda's Brew, felt like part of a blueprint Sophia had exposed. On Monday morning at Apex, Camille was hit with another blow. While reviewing the strategy report for the Asian market, she noticed a familiar analysis, an idea she had shared with Ethan during their late-night work sessions. The concept of using AI to personalize advertising, a strategy she hadn't formally presented, had already been launched in Singapore without her consent. Her name was nowhere to be found in the documents, only Ethan's signature and the Asia team's. This betrayal felt like the final knife tearing apart the last shreds of trust she had left. She stood, her hands trembling as she typed her resignation email. To the executive board of Apex Innovations, she wrote in a professional tone, I hereby tender my resignation from the position of Director of Marketing effective 1 month from today. No mention of Ethan. There is no hint of scandal. She would leave with her dignity intact. As she hit send, her phone buzzed a message from Ethan. Camille. Please let me explain. It's all a misunderstanding. I love you. She deleted the message without replying, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The decision to leave New York came swiftly. Camille couldn't stay in a city where every corner reminded her of Ethan's Central Park Coda's Brew and the 50th floor of Apex. She chose Boston, a fresh city with a rising tech scene where she could start over. With her savings and her mother, Denise's support, she founded Horizon Digital, a digital marketing consultancy. Her first office was just a small room in downtown Boston, but Camille threw herself into the work with fierce determination. She cold-called potential clients, pitched her ideas, and slowly began to build a name. As a Black woman, she knew she had to work twice as hard to be recognized, but that only made her stronger. 2 weeks after moving to Boston, Camille discovered she was pregnant. That morning, she was reviewing a contract with a major client when a wave of nausea hit her. At first, she blamed stress, but the 2 dark lines on the pregnancy test changed everything. The baby was Ethan's. She sat on the bathroom floor, holding her belly, her mind spinning. Part of her wanted to call him, to believe he'd be happy and prove Sophia wrong. But then she remembered his evasive gaze at the gala, the stolen ideas, the articles about his past. She couldn't risk raising her child in the shadow of scandal. Denise, who flew in from Harlem when she heard the news, became Camille's rock. With her salt and pepper hair and resolute eyes, she sat beside Camille and held her hand. You don't need him, Camille, she said, her voice calm but firm. You've built an entire world on your own. This baby will grow up surrounded by love, no doubt." Once a teacher and a single mother, Denise knew the strength it took. She recounted the hard days in Harlem working 3 jobs to raise Camille, and how she taught her daughter that a black woman doesn't wait for miracles, she makes them herself. Her mother's words reignited Camille's spirit. She built Horizon Digital, transforming it from a dream into reality. She landed her first client, a tech startup, winning them with a bold marketing strategy. She worked late nights, her belly growing, crafting plans and analyzing data. By her 5th month, she hired her first employee, a young woman named Maya, who admired Camille's drive. "You're an inspiration, Ms. Harris," Maya said during the interview, and Camille smiled, feeling her confidence slowly return. The night Amara was born, a full moon hung over the Boston harbor, lighting up the hospital room. Camille named her daughter Amara, which means eternal in Igbo, a reminder that her love for this child would never fade. Denise stood beside her, tears shining as she looked at her granddaughter. "She has your eyes," she whispered. But Camille looked into Amara's gray eyes and saw Ethan, a sweet pain she quickly pushed aside. Horizon Digital continued to grow. By the time Amara was 6 months old, the company had 5 employees and a solid reputation. Every morning, Camille stood before the mirror, dressed in her power suits, tying her hair, and reminding herself that she was more than a mother, a leader, a survivor. But sometimes, in quiet moments, she thought of Ethan, his smile, the way he said her name, the kiss in the rain. She wondered if he ever thought of her, or if he'd moved on to another employee, just as Sophia had implied. She opened a leather-bound notebook, her mother's gift, her name engraved on the cover, and wrote down a new goal: to make Horizon Digital surpass Apex within 5 years. It wasn't just career ambition. It was her way of reclaiming control over her life. New York Ethan and the wounds of the past were now a closed chapter. Boston was a new beginning, where she and Amara would build a future that relied on no one else. But deep in her heart, Camille knew that a part of her still belonged to the man with storm-gray eyes, and that terrified her more than any challenge ahead. June sunlight poured gold over Boston Common, where Camille Harris and her 2-year-old daughter Amara built a sandcastle by the lake. Amara, with sparkling gray eyes and curls inherited from her mother, carefully placed a seashell on top of the castle, her tongue peeking out in concentration. Camille smiled, her heart warm, as she watched her daughter, but a flicker of sorrow passed when she noticed how much Amara resembled Ethan Caldwell, the father the little girl had never met. 2 years had passed since Camille left New York. At that time, she had built a new life in Boston, Horizon Digital. Her digital marketing consultancy was now a formidable player in the industry with 10 employees and a growing client list. But Amara's secret remained an unhealed wound. Camille smoothed her green maxi dress and checked her phone to ensure she wouldn't miss a meeting with a major client. As a black woman running a company in the tech world, she knew every success was a declaration, not just that she had survived, but that she had thrived. But each night, as Amara fell asleep, clutching her stuffed elephant, Camille thought of Ethan, his smile, the kiss in the rain, and the betrayal that had shattered her trust. She had chosen not to tell him about Amara, afraid he would bring scandal or pain, just as Sophia Langley had once warned. Suddenly her phone buzzed with a new email. Subject: "We need to talk. Ethan Caldwell." Camille's heart pounded, her hands trembling as she opened it. "Camille," he wrote, "I saw the photo of you and your daughter in the Horizon Digital newsletter. That little girl, she's my daughter, isn't she? I saw her in Boston Common last week. I need to see you. Please give me a chance." Attached was a photo from the company bulletin showing Camille and Amara at an internal event, Amara beaming on her mother's shoulder. Camille felt breathless. Did he see them? Was he in Boston? Boston Common was their weekend sanctuary for building castles, chasing butterflies, and sharing ice cream. The thought that Ethan had been watching them from afar made her feel violated, as if the walls she'd built to protect Amara had collapsed. "Mama, look," Amara called, pointing at the castle, now decorated with a rainbow made from colorful pebbles. Camille forced a smile, masking her panic. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she said, kneeling to kiss her daughter's forehead. "Want to get ice cream with Grandma? Mama needs to make a phone call." Amara nodded excitedly, her eyes lighting up at the mention of ice cream. Camille texted her mother, Denise, who lived just a few blocks away. Denise arrived 10 minutes later, her salt and pepper hair neatly tied back, eyes immediately sensing her daughter's tension. "Is everything okay, Camille?" she asked, gathering Amara into her arms. "I need to handle something," Camille replied, handing over her daughter. "Thank you, Mom." As Denise and Amara headed toward the ice cream stand, Camille found an empty bench, took a deep breath, and dialed Ethan's number, the one she had deleted, but still remembered by heart. "You called." Ethan's voice answered, deep and full of emotion. "Thank you, Camille." "How dare you?" She snapped, her voice trembling with fury. "How dare you watch us? The park is our space, mine and Amara's. You had no right." "Watch you?" Ethan's voice tightened. "Camille, I wasn't watching. I'm in Boston because Apex is opening a new office. I saw the picture in your company newsletter and—" "She has my eyes. I knew immediately. Why didn't you tell me 2 years, Camille? I didn't even know I had a daughter." "You lost that right when you betrayed me," she said coldly. "When you stole my ideas, you made me believe I was just another piece in your game. I'm protecting my daughter from you, from the scandals Sophia warned me about." "Sophia lied," Ethan said, voice pleading. "The Singapore campaign, I credited you in all internal documents. I tried to explain, but you left before I got the chance. As for Amara, you can't keep her from me. She's my daughter too." "She's my daughter," Camille corrected, her voice cracking as tears rose. "I carried her, gave birth to her, held her through every fever. You know nothing about us." "I want to," Ethan said, his tone softening. "I want to know everything, her first steps and words. I've missed you so much, Camille. Please let me meet her." Camille said nothing for a long moment, staring at the lake where families laughed and played. She thought about Amara, how she sometimes watched other children play with their fathers, eyes curious, but never questioning. She thought about her mother, who had raised her alone without her father, yet gave her a childhood full of love. Did she have the right to deny Amara that chance? "One meeting," she said at last, her voice firm. "At Horizon's office next Tuesday. My mother will be present. If everything goes well, we'll talk more. But Ethan, if you hurt her, I won't forgive you." "Thank you," he breathed, voice choked. "I promise, Camille, I won't let you down." She ended the call, her hands still shaking. She looked out across the park where Amara sat laughing with Denise, a cone of ice cream in hand. She knew this meeting would change everything, not just for Amara, but for herself. Ethan wasn't just a part of her past anymore. He was stepping into her present, carrying hope and risk with him. Tuesday. Horizon Digital's office in downtown Boston buzzed with activity as staff prepared for a new campaign. Camille, dressed in an elegant gray suit, stood at the window watching the street below, steadying her breath. Denise sat in the corner with Amara in her lap, reading a book about elephants, Amara's favorite animal. When the doorbell rang, Camille took a deep breath and opened the door. Ethan walked in, tall, in a light blue shirt and slacks, his gray eyes lighting up as he saw Amara. He knelt, smiling gently. "Hi there," he said, voice trembling. "You must be Amara." right? I'm someone who loves telling stories. Would you like to hear one? Amara tilted her head, eyeing him with childlike curiosity. A story about elephants, she asked, her voice clear. Ethan smiled, his eyes shining. A story about a smart elephant living in a great big forest. He began to tell the tale, his voice animated, making Amara giggle. Camille stood a few feet away, fists clenched, heart aching at how similar they looked. The way Amara furrowed her brow when she listened, and Ethan used his hands to act things out. Denise observed her expression, kind but wary. The visit lasted 30 minutes, with Amara calling Ethan the good storyteller and begging him for another tale. As he left, Ethan looked at Camille, his eyes full of emotion. "She's amazing," he said. "Thank you, Camille." She nodded, saying nothing. But when the door closed, she hugged Amara tightly. "Mama, will the storyteller come back?" Amara asked, her gray eyes glowing. "Maybe, sweetheart," Camille whispered, her heart heavy. She had opened a door she wasn't sure she was ready to walk through. But looking into Amara's eyes, Camille knew she couldn't keep the secret forever, not for Ethan's sake, but for her daughter's. The little girl deserved to know her father, no matter how painful the past had been. The Statler Ballroom in Boston sparkled under the lights, transformed into a fairy tale realm for the charity gala benefiting Boston Children's Hospital. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to a glittering view of the harbor, while the sound of violins mingled with the clinking of champagne glasses and the laughter of the elite. In a form-fitting emerald gown, Camille Harris stood near the children's area where her 2-year-old daughter Amara was playing with other children. Amara, with her curly hair and unmistakably gray eyes like her father's, was building a block tower with adorable concentration. Camille smiled, though her heart felt heavy. She hadn't planned on attending this gala, but as CEO of Horizon Digital, she couldn't miss an opportunity to connect with major donors. The meeting between Amara and Ethan Caldwell the previous week at Horizon's office still stirred Camille. Watching Ethan kneel, telling elephant stories to Amara in his gentle voice, she saw glimpses of the man she once loved, the man who had danced with her in the rain in Central Park. However, the fear of betrayal and Sophia Langley's words about Ethan's past remained a wall between them. She and Ethan had agreed to maintain public distance to protect Amara from probing eyes. But his presence tonight, as the executive director of Apex's new Boston office, made her uneasy. "Ms. Harris, what an honor to meet you." A cold voice cut through her thoughts. Camille turned, her heart tightening as she faced Sophia Langley. The woman who had shattered her world 2 years ago was still as stunning as ever, in a fiery red gown, golden hair cascading loosely, but the emerald eyes now carried an unmistakable edge of desperation. "I've heard Horizon Digital is making waves," Sophia said, her smile sharp as a blade. "But I'm curious, how exactly did you build it without borrowing ideas from Apex?" Camille tightened her grip on her champagne glass, keeping her voice calm. "Horizon is my work, Ms. Langley. I didn't borrow anything." "And you? This doesn't seem like your kind of event." Sophia laughed, crisp but venomous. "I support children, of course. But I must admit, seeing your daughter was quite a surprise. Amara, those eyes, unmistakably Caldwell." The veiled threat made Camille's skin crawl. "Stay away from my daughter," she said, voice low and sharp. "You've done enough damage already." "Oh, sweetheart." Sophia leaned in and whispered, "I haven't done anything yet. But the Apex board just received a detailed report on how you built Horizon's stolen strategies, poached clients, and hid Ethan's child. It's sad. A talented black woman falling into scandal." Camille felt the blood drain from her face. "That's a lie," she said, voice shaking with fury. "I didn't take anything from Apex. You know that. Truth depends on evidence." Sophia replied, pulling a USB drive from her purse. Forged documents, fabricated emails, tampered timestamps. I've spent 2 years building this case. You destroyed everything I had, Camille. Ethan and I had a deal, an engagement to merge the Langley fortune with Apex. Then you appeared with your talent and sincerity and made him believe in love. You stole my future. Before Camille could respond, a happy squeal rang out from the children's area. Amara had broken from the group and ran toward Ethan, who stood in a black suit nearby. "Storyteller," she shouted, grabbing his leg. "Come build a tower with me." The crowd around them fell silent, curious eyes turning toward the scene. Ethan knelt, smiling warmly, his face lighting up at the sight of Amara. "Hey, princess," he said, lifting her. "What kind of tower are we building?" Camille froze, her heart pounding. Sophia scoffed. "How touching," she said. "But it won't last. Once the board sees my report, Horizon will crumble, and Ethan will never forgive you for hiding his daughter." Hearing the argument, Ethan stepped forward, still holding Amara. "Sophia," he said, his voice like steel. "Give Camille the USB. Now." Sophia's face paled. Her hand trembled as she handed over the drive. "It doesn't matter anymore," she said, voice cracking. "Everything's in there, fake documents, forged emails, a plan to make you look like a thief. I did everything to win Ethan back and save the Langley family from bankruptcy. But he never stopped loving you, even after you left." Camille held the USB, her mind spinning. "The Singapore campaign," she whispered. "Rachel Nguyen. The accusations, it was all fake." Ethan nodded, his eyes heavy with regret. "I tried to tell you that night at the gala, but you were gone. Sophia forged the documents to make it look like I stole your ideas. Rachel Nguyen was a former employee. She paid to spread rumors. I handled everything legally, but you left New York before I could make things right." Sophia laughed bitterly. "So I've lost, haven't I? You have him. You have the child, the company, and I have nothing but this evidence I created to bury myself." She turned to leave, but Ethan stopped her. "Sophia, the board will know. Everything." "I know," she replied softly, "but I lost everything a long time ago." She disappeared into the crowd, leaving a heavy silence in her wake. Still in Ethan's arms, Amara looked at her mother with innocent eyes. "Mama, why was that lady sad?" she asked. Camille touched her daughter's cheek, tears rolling down. "Because sometimes the truth hurts, sweetheart," she said softly, "but it also helps us heal." Ethan set Amara down and stepped closer to Camille. "I never stole your ideas," he said, his voice hoarse. "Every late night working with you, I just wanted to see you shine. When I learned about Amara, I wanted to be a father, to be someone you could trust." Camille looked into his eyes and saw the sincerity she had once loved. Amara grabbed both hands, her tiny fingers bridging the gap between them. "Block Tower," she cheered, pulling them back toward the kids' area. Camille laughed, tears blending into her smile. The truth had been revealed, but the journey ahead of forgiveness and rebuilding trust wouldn't be easy. Yet, as she watched Ethan and Amara stacking blocks together, she knew she was willing to try. Not just for herself, but for her daughter, and for the love she could no longer deny. Morning light streamed through the windows of Horizon Digital's downtown Boston office, illuminating Camille Harris's desk, where a leather-bound notebook engraved with her name lay next to her laptop. 2 weeks had passed since the charity gala at the Statler Ballroom, where the truth about Sophia Langley had come to light. Life for Camille remained a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Sophia had confessed to forging documents to drive a wedge between her and Ethan Caldwell, revealing that every accusation against Ethan, from stealing Camille's ideas to harassment scandals, had been fabricated. But while the truth was liberating, It left scars behind. Camille looked out at the bustling street, her fingers unconsciously brushing the notebook, a symbol of her journey from the moment she threw it at Ethan at Apex to the dream she had built with Horizon. Sophia's scandal sent shockwaves through the tech world. Articles detailing her scheme spread rapidly, raising questions about transparency at Apex Innovations. As CEO, Ethan faced immense pressure from the board and the media. At a press conference held at Apex Boston's office, he publicly apologized for failing to uncover Sophia's actions sooner. He announced sweeping reforms, an independent oversight board, and a fund supporting women in tech. Apex failed to protect its people, he said, his eyes resolute on the TV screen. Camille watched from her office. I'm committed to making it right. His words, though sincere, left Camille unsettled. Had she truly forgiven him? Or was she trying for the sake of Amara, the 2-year-old daughter who now tethered them together? Camille refocused on Horizon, leading a digital marketing campaign for a major retail corporation. She stood before her team, presenting the strategy with the confidence that had become her signature, a Black woman, a single mother, and CEO of a rising company. But each night, returning to her cozy apartment, she was met with unspoken questions from Amara. The little girl with Ethan's gray eyes often asked, "Where's the storyteller?" Mama Camille would smile and retell the elephant story Ethan had made up, but her heart ached. She had agreed to let Ethan visit Amara regularly, starting with park playdates under the supervision of her mother, Denise. Those moments, Ethan pushing Amara on the swing, laughing as she shouted higher, warmed Camille and scared her in equal measure. One Friday evening, Camille officially invited Ethan for dinner to discuss Amara's visitation schedule. Denise, her silver-streaked hair pulled back and her sharp gaze undimmed, prepared fried chicken and mashed potatoes, the childhood comfort food from Camille's Harlem days. "I want to meet this man," Denise said firmly. "See if he's good enough for my daughter and granddaughter." Camille laughed, but her clenched hands betrayed her tension. When Ethan arrived wearing a blue shirt and jeans and carrying a picture book about elephants for Amara, the apartment seemed to brighten. Amara squealed and ran to hug his leg. "Storyteller," she yelled, dragging him into the living room to read. Camille and Denise watched from the kitchen, and Denise's eyes softened as she saw Ethan sitting on the rug using a funny elephant voice. "He seems genuine," she whispered. "But be sure, Camille. Don't let your heart outrun your mind." Dinner unfolded in warmth, though undercurrents of tension remained. Ethan spoke of his early days at Apex and the pressure from Connecticut to uphold the family legacy. Camille shared about Harlem and how Denise had worked 3 shifts so she could attend Howard University. "My mother taught me, a Black woman has to build her world," she said, looking at Denise with deep gratitude. Ethan nodded, his expression sincere. "She raised an extraordinary woman," he said, and Denise smiled for the first time that evening. After Amara went to bed clutching her stuffed elephant Camille, and Ethan sat in the living room steaming mugs of tea in hand. "I was wrong not to fight harder for you," Ethan said, voice low. "When Sophia spread those lies, I thought legal action was enough. I never imagined you'd leave New York. Leave me." Camille stared into her tea fingers tightening around the mug's handle. "I left because I believed you betrayed me," she said. "Not just my ideas, but my trust. I couldn't stay in a place where everyone looked at me like I was favored, not earned." "I know," Ethan replied, leaning in. "I left you to carry that burden alone. But Camille, I never stopped loving you. Watching you build Horizon and raise Amara has only made me love you more." His words crashed over her like a wave stirring feelings she'd buried. She wanted to protect her heart and maintain distance, but the stormy sincerity in his gray-blue eyes made her falter. "We can't go back," she said, voice shaking. "Too much has changed." I don't want to go back, Ethan said, taking her hand. I want to move forward with you and Amara, as a family. Before she could respond, Amara appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes and clutching her elephant. Mama, can the storyteller sleep over? She asked drowsily. Camille and Ethan burst into laughter, the tension in the room melting away. After Amara returned to bed, Ethan stood and stepped closer to Camille. I'll wait, he whispered. As long as it takes, I'll prove you can trust me. He leaned down and kissed her, a brief, tender kiss full of promise. Her heart raced. When she closed the door behind him, she leaned against it, fingers touching her lips flooded with fear and hope. In the quiet, she heard Amara murmur in her room, "Good storyteller." And for the first time in 2 years, Camille allowed herself to dream of a future where Ethan wasn't just Amara's father, but someone she could love again. The next day, at the Horizon office, Camille received an email from Ethan with a legal document confirming her full credit for the Singapore idea. I want to make things right, he wrote, and I want to do right by you. Camille smiled and opened her notebook, writing a new line. Rebuilding trust, one step at a time. Horizon Digital. Amara. And now Ethan. Her life was changing, and this time she was ready to face it all with the strength of a woman who had learned how to rise from the ashes. Boston Common glowed with autumn splendor on a crisp September afternoon. Crimson maple leaves danced in the breeze, while golden sunlight warmed the scene. Hundreds of tiny lights sparkled among the trees, like stars that had descended from the heavens, guiding the way to a meticulously arranged wedding. Beneath an arch of roses and ivy, Camille Harris was about to become Camille Caldwell, standing beside Ethan Caldwell, the man who had once been a painful memory and was now the center of her world. 6 months had passed since the truth about Sophia Langley had come to light, and together they had rebuilt trust step by step, bonded by love and their daughter Amara. Camille stood before a mirror in a wedding tent near the Swan Boats Lake. Her ivory silk gown hugged her figure, accentuating her smooth brown skin. Her natural curls were adorned with tiny pearls, glistening like morning dew. Denise, her mother, adjusted the veil with eyes full of pride and unshed tears. You look like a dream, Camille, she whispered, her voice thick. Your father would be so proud today. The mention of her late father, a civil rights activist who had passed while Camille was still in college, brought a wave of emotion. Around her neck she wore a pendant containing his photograph, as if he were walking her down the aisle in spirit. Mama's a princess. Amara, now 3, burst into the tent, her pink flower girl dress swirling around her little legs. With Ethan's gray eyes and Camille's radiant smile, she tossed petals across the floor with exuberant joy. Camille laughed and knelt to hug her. Careful with the petals, sweetheart, she said, smoothing her daughter's curls. Are you ready to be the flower girl? Yes. Amara twirled, sending petals flying like rain. Denise guided her back outside, leaving Camille alone for a quiet moment. She touched her belly, where a small secret was growing, their second child due in spring. She planned to surprise Ethan with the news tonight, the perfect wedding gift. The journey to this day had been anything but easy. After the charity gala, Ethan had moved to Boston to manage Apex's local office, wanting to be close to Amara and Camille. What began as scheduled playdates and bedtime stories soon became opportunities to heal. Camille's star continued to rise at Horizon Digital, where she led a breakthrough campaign for an international fashion brand, solidifying her place as a pioneering Black woman in tech. Ethan supported her quietly from behind the scenes, introducing her to investors, but always respecting her space. I want you to shine, not because of me, but because of you, he had once said, dissolving her final doubts. Their wedding reflected a blend of both their worlds. Camille's bouquet featured peonies, her father's favorite flower, while Denise's Mexican heritage was honored with a lasso ceremony after the vows. Ethan, rooted in Connecticut tradition, chose a jazz band reminiscent of the nights they used to listen to music in New York. But the most heartfelt moment had been Ethan's proposal, which took place in the old Apex Boston office where they had once collided. He had knelt holding a leather-bound notebook, engraved with both their names. "From the moment you threw this at me," he said, "I knew you were my destiny." Camille had laughed through tears and said yes before he could even finish the question. The sound of violins signaled the start of the ceremony. Camille stepped out of the tent bathed in autumn sunlight. The guests rose, but all she saw was Ethan beneath the floral arch. His navy suit made his storm-gray eyes even more striking. He looked at her as if she were his entire world. Amara led the procession, carefully scattering petals. But as she neared Ethan, she broke tradition, running forward to hug his leg. "Daddy," she squealed, making guests chuckle. Ethan lifted her into his arms, kissed her cheek, and gently sat her beside Denise. Camille reached Ethan, their hands meeting, the moment feeling breathtakingly right. The officiant began speaking, but Camille barely heard, lost in Ethan's gaze. When it came time for the vows, Ethan went first, his voice deep and steady. "Camille, my love, mother of Amara, keeper of my soul." We began with a notebook and a misunderstanding, but every step and every trial led us here. You taught me that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice made daily. I vow to love you, respect you, and be the father Amara deserves through every storm. Tears streamed down Camille's cheeks as she began her vow. "Ethan, my unexpected partner. They say time heals all wounds, but true love, turns scars into beauty. You taught me that trust, once rebuilt, becomes stronger than ever. I vow to stand beside you to build our future together and to love you through every season. Thank you for Amara, your patience, loving me enough to wait for me to find my way back." Amara, seated beside Denise, suddenly stood. "I promise too," she cried out with clarity. "I promise to love Mama and Daddy forever." Laughter and tears filled the crowd. Ethan and Camille exchanged smiles, then pulled Amara between them, creating a picture-perfect family moment. The ring exchange was simple, yet deeply emotional. Camille's ring, a sapphire, mirrored Ethan's eyes glimmered as he slid it onto her finger. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared. "You may kiss the bride." Ethan cupped Camille's face, wiped her tears with his thumb, and kissed her a tender, powerful kiss that felt like forever. Amara clapped, shouting, "Yay!" as guests laughed and applauded. The reception was a joyful symphony. Amara danced with Ethan, her pink dress twirling, while Camille mingled with colleagues from Horizon and friends from Harlem. Denise shared stories of Camille's father and how he dreamed of a wedding overflowing with love for his daughter. As the sun set, Ethan led Camille toward the lake where the moonlight began to shimmer. "Mrs. Caldwell," he whispered, wrapping his arms around her. "How does it feel?" "Perfect," she replied, leaning into him. "But I have something to tell you." She took his hand and placed it gently on her belly. "We're going to need a new notebook for baby number 2, arriving this spring." Ethan froze. Then his eyes lit up, shimmering with tears. "Really?" he asked, his voice breaking. She nodded, and he kissed her deeply, overwhelmed with joy. Amara ran over, squeezing between them. "Dance," she demanded. And so they danced, all three beneath the moonlight, a family of 3, soon to be 4, held together by love, second chances, and destiny. The gentle April sunlight streamed through the windows of the Back Bay apartment in Boston, where the Caldwell family was preparing to welcome their newest member. Camille Caldwell, formerly, Harris sat in a cushioned armchair cradling baby Noah, his soft curls and storm-gray eyes a mirror of his father Ethan Caldwell. Nearby, 3.5-year-old Amara sat cross-legged on the rug, reading aloud from a picture book about astronauts, her little voice full of seriousness and wonder. "You're going to Mars, right, Noah?" she asked, eyes shining as she looked at her baby brother. Camille smiled, her heart swelling with joy at the sight of her two children. But she couldn't help but reflect on the journey that brought them to this moment. Noah had arrived 3 weeks early on a rainy spring night, with the moon hanging low over Boston Harbor, reminiscent of the night Amara was born. In the delivery room, despite the pain, Camille held tightly to Ethan's hand, drawing strength from him. "I'm here," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "We've got this." When Noah let out his first cry, both of them wept, wrapped in a shared joy that felt overwhelming. While waiting in the hallway with Grandma Denise, Amara shouted, "My baby brother." She immediately dubbed him her little astronaut and declared she would teach him everything she knew, starting with elephants, her favorite animal. A larger family brought sweet changes and new challenges. Camille, now CEO of Horizon Digital, juggled motherhood and leadership with grit and grace. Horizon has recently overtaken Apex Innovations in several markets, thanks to a bold digital campaign for an international electric vehicle company. As Noah napped in his stroller beside her, in one meeting Camille confidently delivered a strategy presentation. "We're not just selling products," she said, her voice firm. "We're telling stories that change the world." Applause erupted from the team veterans like Maya, Horizon's first hire, and new faces alike. As a Black woman in tech, Camille knew that every victory was more than a milestone, it was a statement, and she was determined to inspire the next generation. Now managing Apex offices in Boston and New York, Ethan had also found balance. He launched the Harris Vision Scholarship, which is dedicated to supporting women of color in technology. It was named in honor of Camille. "I want my daughter and son to grow up in a fairer world," he said during the foundation's launch, his gaze locking with Camille's, seated front row, with Amara in her lap. The fund quickly drew national attention, opening doors for dozens of young women, and allowing Ethan to make amends for not protecting Camille when Sophia Langley's scheme unfolded. Though Sophia's scandal had left a shadow, Ethan transformed it into a catalyst for change. Apex now had strict transparency policies, and Ethan regularly spoke at tech conferences, sharing their story as a lesson on the importance of trust. "I almost lost the woman I love because I didn't act fast enough," he once said, moving audiences to tears. Though initially wary of going public, Camille slowly embraced their story as a powerful example of forgiveness and growth. Their home life was a symphony of small, magical moments. One evening, Camille returned from work to find Ethan and Amara in the living room, building a spaceship from blankets and pillows. "Mama, come to Mars with us," Amara squealed, pulling her into the play. Ethan, holding Noah, put on a silly astronaut voice. "Captain Amara, prepare for launch." Camille laughed, diving in, feeling that all the struggles, the scandal, the prejudice, the sleepless nights had been worth it. Amara was a devoted, if occasionally sassy, big sister. She often read to Noah, mimicking Ethan's storytelling voice, making the whole family laugh. "Daddy tells it better," she'd declare, but keep going anyway, her gray eyes sparkling whenever Noah giggled. Camille recorded these moments in her leather-bound journal, now filled with notes about their life. Amara taught Noah to say, "elephant" today, or Ethan burned the pancakes, but the kids still devoured them. One afternoon in Boston Common, where their love story bloomed, Amara ran up to Camille holding a crayon drawing. 4 stick figures stood hand in hand beneath a glowing moon. "This is how you and Daddy met," she said proudly, pointing to 2 figures beside a giant notebook. Camille and Ethan laughed, remembering the day she threw that notebook at him in the Apex office. "You know that story?" Camille asked, hugging her. Daddy told me, Amara replied, before running off to chase butterflies. Ethan wrapped his arms around Camille from behind and whispered, I told her. Her mama is the strongest woman I've ever known. They stood in silence watching Amara play Noah, dozing in his stroller, and the same moon that had once lit their first kiss shining down on their growing family. Denise, now living nearby, remained their emotional anchor. One evening, she brought over her famous Harlem-style cornbread. Over dinner, she reminisced about Camille's father, the man who once dreamed his daughter would lead an empire. You've done it, Camille, she said, eyes gleaming, and you chose the right partner to build it with. Under the table, Ethan squeezed Camille's hand, his eyes filled with gratitude. As night fell, Camille and Ethan sat on the balcony bathed in moonlight. Did you ever think we'd make it here? She asked, leaning into him. After everything, Sophia. The scandal 2 years apart, I did, Ethan replied, kissing her hair. Because no matter what, you were always home. They held each other, the moonlight casting a glow on a future that felt wide open, a growing family, a stronger love, and a journal still waiting to be filled with new stories. October sunlight danced across the glass windows of Horizon Digital's headquarters in downtown Boston, where Camille Caldwell was preparing for another demanding day. The modern office's white walls, adorned with abstract art, stood as a testament to her journey from a marketing associate at Apex Innovations to CEO of one of the nation's leading digital marketing consultancies. On her desk sat a leather-bound notebook engraved with her name, a gift from her mother Denise, and a framed family photo, Camille Ethan Caldwell, 4-year-old Amara, and 1-year-old Noah, smiling brightly in Boston Common. But today, Camille's smile carried a trace of tension. Horizon had just been sued by a rival Nexus Tech for allegedly infringing on proprietary digital marketing strategies. Camille stood before her team dressed in a deep navy blue suit that complemented her smooth brown skin. Her voice was poised and resolute. Nexus is trying to slow us down, she said, her gaze sweeping across the room from Maya, her longtime colleague, to the recruits. But Horizon was built on integrity and innovation. We will prove that, not just for ourselves, but for the clients and communities who believe in us. As the meeting ended, she returned to her office and placed her hand on the family photo, the unease rising again. As a black woman in tech, she understood that lawsuits like this weren't just legal battles, they were assaults on credibility. And her success was often viewed as a threat, not a triumph. Camille called Ethan immediately after the meeting. He arrived at Horizon with a thick folder of documents from Apex's legal team. In a rolled-up shirt and slacks, he exuded the calm she needed. Nexus has no solid evidence, he said, sitting beside her. They're playing psychological games hoping you'll settle. But I know you never back down. He took her hand, his steel-gray eyes steady, flashing with the same fire she saw when they once danced in the rain in Central Park. Camille smiled faintly, but concern lingered. If we lose Ethan, Horizon's reputation could be destroyed. I can't let our employees, our clients, or our children be affected. Ethan nodded, then revealed something he'd never told her, how he had once turned down a significant contract with Nexus during the Sophia Langley scandal to protect her. I chose you then. I'll choose you every time, he said, warming her heart despite the storm. Later that afternoon, Denise arrived at the office with Amara and Noah, who were fresh from preschool. With salt and pepper hair and an air of quiet strength, she brought a tin of homemade Harlem-style cornbread, its aroma filling the room with warmth. You'll overcome this, Camille, Denise said, embracing her daughter. Your father faced lawsuits in the fight for justice. You carry his blood, nothing can stop you. She shared stories of Camille's father, a civil rights activist who had taught her, a black woman must fight twice as hard, but her victories echo through generations. Amara, her gray eyes just like Ethan's, had been eavesdropping. She ran up and wrapped her arms tightly around Camille. "Mama's a superhero," she declared, sending laughter through the room. Noah added his support in Denise's arms with a gurgled. Mama Camille kissed them both, drawing strength from her family. "Thank you, Amara," she whispered, stroking her daughter's curls. "Mama will fight for you and Noah." The lawsuit stretched over 3 exhausting months-long court days and late-night document reviews. With Ethan's support and a relentless legal team, Camille demonstrated that Horizon's strategies were original and founded on independent research and innovation. At the final hearing, she stood before the judge, voice steady and sharp. "Horizon Digital did not copy," she declared. "We create. And I'm proud to lead a team that upholds honesty as a core value." The court ruled in Horizon's favor, ordering Nexus to issue a public apology. Applause erupted in the courtroom. Ethan, seated in the back row, beamed with pride. That evening at home, Amara hosted a mock trial to celebrate. Dressed in a princess gown with a paper crown, she stood atop a chair and declared, "Mama wins because Mama's the best." Noah clapped, dropping his cookie, while Ethan, playing the pretend defendant, bowed his head in defeat. Camille laughed, embracing her family, feeling stronger for having weathered the storm. Denise, watching from the couch, gave Camille a knowing smile. "You've built your legacy, Camille," she said, "not just for Horizon, but for your children." After the kids were tucked in, Camille and Ethan sat on the balcony beneath a glowing moon. She opened her leather journal and wrote, "The trial is over. My family is my strength." Ethan wrapped his arms around her and whispered, "You are the legacy, Camille. For me, for our children, for everyone you touch." She leaned into him, knowing this trial, like the Sophia scandal before, had forged them into something unbreakable. Her legacy, love, resilience, and a journal filled with stories, would live on through Amara, Noah, and the generations yet to come. The full moon hovered over Boston Harbor, casting silver light across the garden of the Four Seasons Hotel, where Camille and Ethan Caldwell were hosting a charity gala to celebrate their 10th wedding anniversary. Hundreds of guests, from tech industry leaders to old friends from Harlem, gathered beneath twinkling string lights, raising their glasses in honor of love and legacy. Radiantly, in a crimson evening gown that hugged her figure, Camille stood beside Ethan, whose navy tuxedo brought out the steel gray of his eyes. 13-year-old Amara and 9-year-old Noah stole the spotlight. Amara delivered a heartfelt speech, while Noah unveiled a small robot he'd built himself. Camille's leather-bound journal at the center table, engraved with her name, a silent witness to their journey from an untraveled notebook at Apex Innovations to an unshakable family. The gala raised funds for the Harris Vision Foundation, which Ethan established to support women of color in technology, inspired by Camille. As CEO of Horizon Digital, Camille had transformed the company into a powerhouse, surpassing Apex in multiple markets through bold, narrative-driven digital campaigns. On stage, Camille's confident gaze swept across the hall. "Harris Vision is not just a scholarship," she said, voice resonant and clear. "It's a promise that every woman, regardless of where she begins, can help shape the future." Applause rippled through the audience, and many visibly moved, especially Denise, Camille's mother, seated in the front row, her eyes gleaming with pride. Then, Amara took the stage, her curls tied high, and her presence as poised as her mother's. "My parents taught me that love is like a journal," she said brightly. "Sometimes messy, sometimes in need of editing, but always full of stories that never end. I'm proud to be part of theirs." Her speech, blending wit and warmth, drew laughter and tears alike. Camille embraced her daughter afterwards, whispering, "You make me so proud, Amara." Next came Noah, with his father's eyes and a budding love for science. He surprised the crowd when his small robot designed to resemble an elephant walked on stage and declared, "Love you, Mom and Dad." The room erupted in applause. Ethan scooped Noah into his arms, laughing. "Son, you just stole the whole show." Noah giggled, hugging his father while Camille looked on, her heart full. That moment, Amara's speech, Noah's invention, was a living testament to the love and resilience that bound their family together. The past decade had not been without hardship. The Sophia Langley scandal had once left deep scars, but Ethan turned it into a catalyst for change. He reformed Apex, promoted transparency, and often shared their story to inspire others. The lawsuit from Nexus Tech 3 years earlier had tested Camille's leadership, but her courtroom victory further solidified her status as a trailblazing Black woman in tech. "Every trial makes us stronger," she had once told Ethan, and he agreed, holding her hand beneath the moonlight. Denise, now retired, but ever energetic, remained the family's emotional anchor. At the gala, she brought her signature Harlem-style cornbread, a nostalgic nod to the tough years when she raised Camille alone. "You've gone far beyond your father's dreams," she hugged Camille. "He would be proud to see you've built not just a company, but a family." She spoke of Camille's father, a man who had fought for justice, and taught his daughter, "A Black woman must write her own story, no matter what stands in her way." The Caldwell household was a vibrant portrait of love. Amara, a budding artist, filled the home with paintings of the family under the moonlight of Grandma Denise's portrait. Noah, the little engineer, built robots from Lego and consulted his parents with an adorable seriousness. One evening before the gala, Amara asked Camille how she and Ethan met. "Dad said you threw a notebook at him," she said, her eyes twinkling. Camille laughed and recounted the story, not embarrassed, but proud of how far they had come. As the gala wound down, Ethan led Camille onto the balcony, the moon glowing above. 10 years, he whispered, wrapping his arms around her. "Any regrets?" Camille leaned into him, recalling the kiss in the rain, the Sophia scandal, their time apart, and the joy of raising Amara and Noah. "None," she said, taking his hand. "Every step led me here with you and the kids." Ethan pulled a new journal from his pocket, its leather cover engraved with 4 names: Camille, Ethan, Amara, and Noah. "For the next decade," he said, handing it to her. Camille opened it. Inside, in Ethan's handwriting, were the words, "Forever together under the moonlight." She kissed him, feeling the moon still watching over them, just as it had on the night they met. Amara and Noah came running, squeezing between them. "Dance." Amara insisted, pulling them into a spontaneous sway. The guests clapped. Denise laughed heartily, and the moon lit up the Caldwell family, a story of love, resilience, and forever written in the ink of trials and joy, within a journal that would never close.